If there's a list of things about yourself you've quietly filed under this is probably a flaw. This one is about you. Because most of what you've been calling a flaw isn't one. It's the visible edge of something that works, and nobody ever showed you the rest of it. By the end of this, you'll have 10 of them, with the actual mechanism underneath each, and you'll know which ones are genuinely rare rather than just inconvenient. Because you do keep the list. Not written down, nobody writes it down, but you could produce it right now if someone asked, and it would take you about 15 seconds. Too sensitive, too much in my head, takes things too seriously, needs too much time alone. You've been adding to it since school, and some of the entries are in someone else's handwriting. A teacher's, a parent's, someone who said it once in passing and never thought about it again. Nobody has ever gone through that list with you and checked whether any of it was true. Let's go. And one thing before we start, because it changes how you'll hear the rest. None of these are personality quirks in the sense of decoration. Every one of them is a trade. You got something for it, and you're paying for it, and nobody itemized either side. You've only ever seen the invoice. 1. You rehearse conversations before you have them. You've decided this is anxiety. It's mostly not. What you're doing is running a simulation, testing what happens if you say it this way versus that way, so the real version costs less. It's the same thing a chess player does, applied to a conversation about the dishwasher. The reason it feels pathological is that you only notice it when it loops, but the loop isn't the process. The loop is what happens when the simulation can't find an acceptable outcome, so it keeps rerunning. The rehearsing is a skill. The looping is the skill with nowhere to land. You can test this on yourself. Think about the conversations you rehearse. They're almost never with people who are easy. You don't rehearse ordering coffee. They're with people whose reaction you can't predict. That's the tell. It isn't fear of talking. It's low confidence in the model you have of that specific person, which means the rehearsing goes down when you know someone well, and it does. 2. You need a recovery day after seeing people. Not because you dislike them, because you process the evening at a higher resolution than most people did. Everyone at that table took in the conversation. You also took in who went quiet, who was slightly off with whom, the thing someone said that landed wrong and got smoothed over. That's several times the data, and data has to be processed somewhere, so it gets processed afterwards, usually the next morning, while you're doing something else and wondering why you're tired. You didn't do the same evening as everyone else. You did a longer one. And notice the shape of the tiredness. It isn't the tiredness of effort. You weren't lifting anything. It's closer to the feeling after a long drive in bad weather. You were tracking, continuously, for hours. Nobody thinks a 4-hour drive should be free. Somehow, a 4-hour dinner is supposed to be. 3. You know someone's mood changed before they've said a word. This one people compliment you on, and it still costs you. What you're reading is micro signals, a half-second delay before a reply, a shift in posture, a smile that arrived with the mouth and not the eyes. Most people filter that out as noise. Your system flags it because at some point flagging it early was useful. The problem isn't accuracy, it's that you get the alert without the explanation. You know something changed, you don't know why. So you fill the gap with the most available explanation, and the most available explanation is usually yourself. There's a second cost too, and it's socially expensive. You often know something before the person is ready for you to know it, so you either say something and they feel exposed, or you say nothing and carry the information alone for 2 weeks. Neither is comfortable, and there isn't a third option. 4. You can't work with music that has words in it. This one's almost purely mechanical, and it's oddly reassuring. Language and lyrics use the same channel. If you think in sentences while you work, and you do, then a voice singing words is another set of sentences competing for the same narrow lane. Instrumental music doesn't touch it. Rain doesn't touch it. You're not fragile about noise. You're using that channel already. The same thing explains why you can't listen to a podcast while writing an email and why some people can. They're not more capable. They're just not narrating internally while they work, so the lane is free. 5. You reread a message after you've sent it. Not to check spelling, to check tone, to see how it will read to someone who doesn't have your face. That's not insecurity. That's modeling the reader, which is a real skill and most people can't do it. Written words lose everything. The eyebrow, the pause, the small laugh that would have made it obviously affectionate. You know that, so you check. The cost is that you can run the check indefinitely because there's no version of a sentence that can't be misread by someone determined to. Watch what you actually check for. It's almost never whether you were clear. It's whether you came across as cold or demanding or like you were making a bigger deal of something than you meant to. You're not auditing the information, you're auditing how much space you took up. Now, before the second half, if you've been recognizing yourself in these, that's what this channel does. One mechanism at a time, taken apart properly. Subscribing means the next one finds you instead of you having to remember this existed. Right. 6. You go quiet in groups and then talk for 3 hours one-on-one. People read this as shyness. It isn't. It's a threshold. Before you speak, something in you checks. Does this add anything? Is it the right moment? Has someone already said it better? That check takes a couple of seconds. Group conversation moves faster than a couple of seconds, so by the time you've cleared it, the subject has moved on. Repeat that 6 times and you're the quiet one. One-on-one, nothing moves without you. The check has time to complete. Same person, different bandwidth. And this is why group settings leave you with the specific feeling of having failed at something. You didn't. You produced maybe 4 sentences over 2 hours, and you know the whole time that you had better things to say than most of what was said. That gap between what you had available and what got out is the actual discomfort, not the silence itself. 7. You remember what people told you months ago, and it startles them. You bring up their sister's operation or the exam they were dreading, and they say, "I can't believe you remembered that." You didn't work at remembering it. You stored it because you encoded meaning rather than events. Most people file conversations as things that happened. You file them as what this matters to them, and meaning is much stickier than fact, which is also why you can remember exactly what someone said in 2019 and not where you put your keys 40 seconds ago. Same system, doing what it's built for. There's an odd side effect. Because you remember what mattered to people, you often know more about a friendship than the other person does. You remember what they were worried about last spring. They remember that you're nice to talk to. That asymmetry isn't anyone's fault, but it's why these friendships sometimes feel less mutual to you than they look from outside. 8. You can't do small talk, but you'll happily discuss something strange for 2 hours. Small talk isn't shallow. It's a protocol. It exists to establish that two people are safe with each other before anything real is exchanged. Everyone knows the moves, and no information is meant to change hands. Your problem is that you're built to transfer information, and a protocol that deliberately transfers none reads to you as empty. So you sit there feeling like you're failing at something simple, when actually you're running the wrong tool for the job, like using a microscope to check the time. The workaround, if you want one, is to stop treating small talk as a conversation and start treating it as a door. Nobody has to say anything meaningful in the first 90 seconds. That part is just both people confirming it's safe to continue. Get through the door, and you can have the conversation you actually wanted. Most people who hate small talk are trying to skip the door and then wondering why the room stayed shut. 9. You feel someone else's discomfort in your own body. Somebody on screen embarrasses themselves and you physically flinch or have to leave the room. Everyone mirrors other people's states to some degree. That's standard equipment. Yours has the volume higher. You don't observe their discomfort at a distance. You get a weakened copy of it locally, and it takes real time to clear. That's not sensitivity as a personality trait. It's bandwidth. And the same channel that makes a stranger's embarrassment physically unpleasant is the one that makes you good with people who are struggling. It also explains something you may have been quietly judging yourself for, why you avoid certain films, certain scenes, certain videos of people humiliating themselves. That isn't squeamishness. You're declining to run a copy of something unpleasant through your own body for entertainment, which, when you put it that way, is a fairly reasonable decision. 10. You need to know why before you can do the thing. You've been called difficult for this, possibly since you were about 6. But look at what's actually happening. You don't run on instruction, you run on a model. Once you understand why something matters, you'll do it thoroughly and without supervision, often better than the person who asked. Without the model, you can generate the motivation at all, not won't, can't. That's not defiance. It's a different power supply, and it's the reason you're excellent at work you believe in and completely useless at work you don't. And it's worth knowing what this does to you in a job. You will outperform badly when the point is explained and underperform badly when it isn't. And to a manager who doesn't know that, you look inconsistent. You're not inconsistent, you're conditional. Those are different, and the difference is worth being able to say out loud. So, those are the 10. Now look at what they have in common, because they're not 10 separate things. Every one of them is the same system seen from a different angle. You're running at a higher resolution than the environment expects. More signal taken in, more of it processed, more of it stored with meaning attached. And resolution has a cost. That's the part nobody tells you. The tiredness after the dinner, the recovery day, the checking, the not being able to think with lyrics playing. Those aren't 10 malfunctions. They're the running cost of one setting. You've been reading the electricity bill as evidence of a broken appliance. The last thing worth saying, none of this makes you better than anyone. It's a trade, not a rank. People who don't do these things get a lighter version of most days, and that's a real advantage, and some of them would find your inner world exhausting within an hour. And if you want one thing to do with this, it's not affirmations, it's smaller. Take the list, the real one, the 15-second one, and next to each item write what it costs you and what it gets you, both columns. Most of those entries have never had the second column filled in, which is the only reason they still look like faults. 2 of these a week if you want them, because the list you've been keeping is mostly filed wrong. Those aren't 10 flaws, they're one design, and it's been working the whole time.